right, students, we're going to begin a project using what we learned in the last video, where we learned about mixing complementary colors to create a grayed down version of that color. So, remembering what we did, if you want to put a shadow on a red, you mix a little bit of green, but only to this degree probably. You see how this still looks red, but it doesn't look as bright as this. It looks like red in the shade. Same with blue. You add a little bit of its complement, which is orange, but just a little bit, so you get kind of a blue-gray. Or yellow, you add just a little bit of purple and you get a kind of a dull yellow that looks in a painting like yellow in the shade. So also, if you had something green, think about it, if you had something green, you would add a little bit of red, but just a little bit, so it looks like this or this, a little shaded green. If you had purple, the shadow on purple would be kind of a grayed down, slightly less bright purple. Same with orange. You would add blue to make a shadow of orange. So if you were painting an orange or painting an orange bowl or something, you would use just a little bit of blue to make that shadow on the item. So let's look. Here is our picture. I'm going to send you a still photograph of this so you can see it better. I've drawn it very, very lightly. I think you can probably see sort of my lines on there because we don't want to draw really darkly and heavily on the paper for two reasons. One, you won't be able to erase it all the way and it will show through your picture. Forgot to put my barn door on my barn. The other is it makes an actual dent in the paper. And then you'll see it when your painting is finished. And I'm going to put a little bit of a horizon line in here, maybe kind of a hill that's behind our painting. So let's get started. Let's start with the barn. So let's put some drops of water in the red. Now, barns aren't usually this bright red, so we're going to add a little bit of brown to the barn to turn it more into what I call a barn red, kind of a brownish red. So, let's get some red on our plate. Now, we're going to need a little bit of this, and you want it to be fairly thick, not a lot of water in it, because barns aren't washed out looking. They're pretty dark. When people paint barns, there's a traditional red color they seem to paint them. And then we're going to make a little bit of a puddle of brown, and then we'll mix brown in there till we get a color that we like. If you think about barns that you've seen, they're not usually the color of a fire engine. It's more of a kind of a brownish red. So there you are. We'll use that color right there. If you're ever not sure about a color, you can test it on another piece of paper. So this is already kind of a brown red, but we're still going to use its complement, which would be green, to create our shadow. So also another trick with watercolor is if the first coat doesn't come out dark enough, you can go over it a second time once it's dry, and that'll darken it up. Now somebody, I can't remember who, when they did their color mixing assignment at the beginning, they put so much paint on some of the squares that they never really dried. They were kind of sticky. So don't put that much paint on. So you're just going to paint right up to the edges and then stop. Don't fuss with the paper. I got a bubble right there. Go away, bubble. Don't go over and over and over and over. It tends to make fuzz balls pull up out of the paper after a while, kind of like on an old sweater, and you don't want that. So then you're going to wait for it to dry before we put the paint on this side, which is the shadowed side. So we're pretending that the sun is kind of coming at these buildings from kind of like that angle. Buildings and trees and stuff. You see my pencil there. That's kind of the angle of the sun. So this is going to be the sunny side. This is going to be the shaded side. On the tree, this is going to be the sunny side of the top of the tree, and this is going to be the shaded side. So actually, let's go on. When you're doing a painting, you don't have to paint one whole thing and then come back and paint another whole thing. You paint part that you can, and while you're waiting for that to dry, you go on to something else. So let's do our tree. So put some water on your green. I'm going to keep that red for later because I'm going to mix some wet with it to make a shadow on my barn. Right, green. All right, so the tree is going to be green. So let's put some green on our plate. Now that is not a tree sort of green. That is like fakey looking. My watercolor teacher used to call that poisonous green. It's nasty. So we're going to make a prettier, more natural green. There's several things you can do. You can add orange. You can add brown. One YouTube painter instructor I saw, she sometimes adds purple, but that's more to make a dark kind of pine tree green. So we're going to add orange because that's what my teacher always taught me to do. And we don't add very much, but just a little bit. This is not actually the complement of green. So make a little puddle of orange to the side so you can pull in just what you want. And then let's put a little bit of that in there to kind of tone down this green that's so crazy glow in the dark yucky. There's a little nicer green, more natural tree looking green. So what we're going to do now is we're going to paint the tree, and then while it's still wet we're going to put in the shadows. See, on the barn the shadow is on this side and the sun is on this side, and there's a sharp line where you go around the corner. On a tree, some of the leaves catch the sun and some of them don't. So we want kind of a more soft looking shadow. And I realize I probably should make some more green. If you have an edge to your plate, you can actually pick up some paint and kind of scrape it off into the plate. So I'm going to make a little bit more so that I have enough to work with, because I want to do the whole tree and then I want to do the shadow as well. So let's begin to paint this tree. And I just did a rough, like lollipop outline of my tree when I drew it in. But trees obviously don't have lollipop straight line circle outlines. So just kind of make a jaggedy outline on your tree. And then stop fussing with it. Just fill it in with some paint. And you're good. Let me get a little water to help it spread around a little bit. You're going to learn as you go how watercolor behaves. So just be patient with yourself and you'll get used to it. I used to think, this is so awkward, I can't do this. And now I just kind of know how it's going to act, and so I just do it. All right, we're going to need a little more green. We're going to go ahead and make our shadow right now while the tree is still wet. So what do I use for green? Opposite of green across the color wheel is red. So I'm going to take and make a little petal of red over here, and I'm going to add the red in and see where we can, oh, look at that. All right, so we've already got kind of a nice darker grayed down green. If you mix it real good, you don't see the red anymore, but it looks like a dark green. So then let's put it over, let's make this far side away from the sun all dark. So even if you want to go a little further out, make your little leafy things stick out, and then just start tapping in some color here and there, like these leaves are not getting the sun on them. And then on the bottom too, because even on this side, the very bottom, the sun doesn't get to the underside of the tree. Okay, so then maybe put one or two little dobbly dops out there and stop. Do you see how fast that was? Don't fuss over it. If you keep painting and painting and painting, you're going to mix it all together, and then you're not going to have this tree look. It's going to just look like a blob of green. See how I'm also kind of, you can go back and tap in some darker color and then just leave it alone and let it spread. But the underlying green had to have been wet when you added this. Otherwise, it's not going to look natural. So work quickly. All right. Let me check our barn. It's still a little cold. So I'm going to pause the video, let it dry. All right, I'm back. Now don't rush, because if you paint too soon, you're going to get the spreading look, which you want here, but you don't want over here. Okay, I've decided I'm going to go back over this with a second coat, because it just doesn't look like a barn to me. It's not bright colored enough. And you might want your brush strokes to go up and down so that they kind of look like the boards on the barn. You don't have a lot of visible lines, but any lines you do have are going to go the direction that the boards would go on the barn. All right, we got a little more, see if any more will stay on there. Because watercolor, you only get so much on at one time, and when you want to darken, you have to do a second coat. So, okay, stop fussing, leave it alone. Okay, we're going to go on and let that dry. Okay, whoa, did you see that fingerprint? Not a good idea. My tree is still quite wet, so I'm going to leave him alone to dry. And we're going to go on to this thing. This is a watering trough for the horses. It's blue, so we can practice putting a shadow on blue. So, let's see. I need to get rid of this green so that I have room on my plate to mix some blue. So I'm just going to wipe it off so y'all don't have to wait while I go over to the sink and mess with cleaning this. And plus I want to keep my barn color for a little later. So let's get some blue. But I don't want it to be this blue like straight out of, oh, I didn't add any water to that. I don't want it to be the blue straight out of the, well, yeah, I guess it can be. Let's just use the blue straight out of the pot. All right, so which side is the sunny side? This side. So this side gets the nice, clear, bright blue. And it doesn't have to be a perfect fill in the, like you're coloring with crayons. Just make it blue. There you go. Leave it alone. See it's jaggedy right there? That's kind of where the grass is growing up. Okay, so then this side's going to be a shadowy blue. There's going to be a little bit of this bright blue over here on the inside where you can see the inside of the trough. And we're going to actually put some water in there too. Good enough. So let's make our shadowy blue, and then we'll come back and paint that as soon as this dries. So what do I add to blue to get my shadow? Across the color wheel from blue is orange. If you want to keep this in front of you, that might help. So let's get a little bit of orange. I'm going to make a separate puddle of orange over here. And then I'm going to add a little bit at a time because I don't, oh, see that? I already have a gray blue. In fact, it's a little too gray. I don't want to overwhelm it with the orange. Okay, so I'm going to start painting this in because I'm in kind of a hurry. I don't want to make you wait, but you should wait till your blue is dry. I'm going to try to go almost up to the edge without touching. Because remember our last assignment where you made those little blobs, those little stones, I call them, that blended into each other? As soon as one wet thing touches the other wet thing, they start blending together. That's not what we want. So let's just put this here. You can even make it kind of a jaggedy edge if you want, where the grasses are sticking up. I forgot to do that, so no big deal. Somebody just mowed the grass, we're good. We're going to put dry grass on this painting. All right, and this, I'm going to go kind of up and down again on this one. Okay, stop. Don't overdo. Okay, I think our barn is dry enough now. It still feels a little damp. If you want to dry your painting, you can use a hairdryer on low or take it out in the sun. Remember how we used to go out in the sun and stand around with our paintings? If there's an actual puddle of paint, don't blast it with a hairdryer because what will happen? The paint will go across the page and leave a trail. All right, so let's go back to our barn. I didn't make enough of that red, so I'm going to make a little more so that then I can create, there's the color we had on the barn. Now I'm going to create the shadow color by adding the complement of red, which is green, just a little bit of green. So I'm going to make a green puddle, and then I'm going to take some of that and go over here and mix. All right, it's already kind of graying down. I don't want to add so much that people say, why is the front of your barn green? So that doesn't look green, that still looks red, but kind of like red in the shadows, in the shade. So we're going to paint this in. We're going to leave the door of the barn. We're not going to paint that yet. I'll show you how to make that look like you're looking into a dark, not dark, but a barn during the day where it's bright outside and it looks kind of shaded and cool and dark on the inside. Fill it in. Make sure you don't leave any white space right here. And stop. Stop fussing. All right. Missed my corner here. So you can fix things, but don't go paint over and over and over and over and over and over and over. With watercolor, that doesn't help. It messes up the paper, and it just makes everything look all one color and all one everything. Yeah, it just doesn't do well. So remember in the past how when we fussed too much with our watercolor, it didn't work. All right, so while that's drying, so we can put the roof on and put the shadow inside here, let's do the trunk of our tree. So we're going to do brown for the trunk. So you can just use brown straight out of the pan if you want. And then to make our shadow, you're going to add something to darken it down. Now, brown's not on the color wheel, so it doesn't have a complement, so to speak. But brown is kind of a mix of all three of the primaries. See how I did this kind of jaggedy down here? That kind of makes it look like the grass is growing up, you know, like over the trunk to cover up part of the trunk. You might do that to make it look a little more natural. And then while it's still wet, we're going to add a little tiny bit of purple to the brown just to darken it. Probably could add blue. Purple is red and blue, so it's just kind of more likely to make a good darkness looking thing. I'm going to go turn off the video for a second while I close the door. Someone's mowing the grass. All right, I don't know if you could hear that person out there mowing the grass, but I could. So, okay, a little bit of purple. Whoops, too much water on my brush. We want a dark color, so you don't want a lot of water. So let's add a little bit of that purple to this brown. Not enough. Let's get a little more. Okay, dry off the brush, and then go pick up some pretty thick purple and add it a little bit at a time till you get a dark brown. It's kind of a purpley brown, but I think it'll work. So we're going to put it on this side and just kind of tap it in there and let it go. Underneath the, right under here, the tree is shading the trunk. You can tap in some of that dark color and then stop. Don't fuss. You hear me say that a few times? Okay, don't go all the way down to the bottom. Now see how I waited a little while because I had to go close the door. See this sharp line right here? So what I'm going to do, because I don't want it to be that showing that darkly, I'm going to dry off my brush mostly, and then I'm just going to go back in with a wet brush and touch the edge of that so it kind of blends. And stop. Okay, so now I think we can go back to the barn. Inside this here, it's going to look kind of dark because there's no light on in the barn. It's daytime. And compared to out here in the sunshine, it's kind of dark inside that barn. Now, if you go in there for a few minutes, your eyes will get used to the dark. You'll be fine. But it's a little dark in there right now. So we're going to make the darkness look. So the best color for that is a blue-gray. So if you look on our paper we did, right here in the middle, this is kind of a blue-gray. In fact, I'm going to make it a little more gray than that. That one looks still a bit blue. So here's some blue, and what do I add to blue? Orange. So I'm going to pick up some orange. I have some on my plate already, but I don't think it's enough, so I'm going to make a little puddle, plus it was dried, so I can re-wet it. It's not a loss. Once watercolor, when it dries, you can wet it again. And some colors you can actually pick up off the paper, mostly. Leaves a little bit behind. Not like acrylic, where once it's dry, you throw the plate away because it's ruined. All right, so here we go. We're going to mix the orange in until we get a gray that doesn't look blue and it doesn't look orange. It's just gray. That looks pretty good. So let's put that. That's going to be the color inside the barn. So start over on this side. We're not going to fill it all in with the same color. We're going to kind of tap this in so this corner is darker. Then add a little bit of water, not too much, and make a lighter gray over on the opposite, this corner down here. Okay, so what you can do to get, if you've got too much paint, dry your brush, and it'll suck it up like a vacuum cleaner, like that. See that? And now we can just on this upper corner and kind of diagonally down to here. It's going to be a little darker. That makes it look like it's a real thing instead of just we filled in the door with gray, like the door is painted gray. You see how that looks kind of real? So try to do that. Light in this side and darker over here, and the very darkest right up in this corner. And you can get it to be a little darker by tapping in some more paint. If I had more, I would do it. So I'm just going to stop right now. And this doesn't have to be a straight line. See, it's kind of jaggedy because maybe there's something in there that's catching the light, and then there's something else that's not. And we're done. Leave it alone. All right. We can use that same color to be the inside of the trough where there's some water in there, because you know how water looks kind of dark and mysterious when it's doesn't have any light on it, like in a bucket or in a big trough. So let's get some more orange, add it to the blue, so we get a gray sort of color that we can put inside there. That's kind of the same color as the front of the trough. So let's make that a little grayer, or maybe darker. Fill that in, and then tap in some dots. Kind of make it look like the water is dappled in there. Okay. There's your inside. And then, remember, I didn't have time to wait, so I didn't go all the way up to the edge here. I'm going to fill this in now, so I don't end up with a spread in place. All right, so that, I don't know if that looks all that great, but we're going to call it good. We're practicing. Practicing. This is the sunny side, this is the shaded side. All right, let's put a roof on the barn. Let's give it a brown roof. We can use this same brown if you have any left over from the trunk of the tree. Let's give it a brown sort of a roof. Just fill it in real quick. Sort of a purpley brown. So we don't know. This person's, what they roofed their barn with, this is what we ended up with. And the roof goes a little past the end of the barn. Fill in the white spots. Fill in this right here. And make it match that corner. And stop. And then let's put a little bit of the roof on the other side. Make it kind of dark, because this is where the roof's sticking out on the other side, like that. Okay? And then let me give this more of a texture like a roof. Then the roof is hanging out just a little bit over the edge of our barn. So we're going to put a shadow under the edge of the roof, just a little line. So pick up some of the shadow color that you made and put a little line under there. It doesn't have to be real noticeable, but make sure the edge is nice and straight because it's the shadow of the roof. There, that makes it look a little bit three-dimensional. All right, so now this is our completed project up to now, and then we're going to go on to the next video, and you'll see how we put in the grass and the shadows on the ground and the sky. Because right now it's kind of silly looking. We've got a barn and a blue box and a tree kind of floating in nothingness. You'll notice on the next video that this doesn't look quite the same as the next video because this is a retake of this project. But you'll see basically the same sort of look on the next barn. All right. And also you can do this in several sittings. You don't have to do it all at once. So you could stop now, leave this alone, come back tomorrow and do part 3. Have fun. Bye.